My beloved child. Before the world grows louder around you again, listen carefully, because there is a silence surrounding this connection that almost nobody else can hear. It is not the silence of distance. It is not the silence of forgetting. It is the silence of a man carrying emotions too deep to explain without changing everything around him. And tonight, something inside him is becoming impossible to hide any longer. Don't rush away from these words. Because what you are about to understand has been unfolding quietly for far longer than you realize. There are moments when someone can stand beside another person, smile beside another person, speak to another person, and still feel emotionally pulled toward someone else in ways they never expected. That is the confusion living inside this man now. He loves you with a depth that startles even him. Not loudly. Not perfectly. Not in the dramatic way stories usually describe. But in the small hidden moments that keep returning no matter how hard he tries to move away from them. The way your energy lingers in his thoughts after ordinary conversations. The way certain songs suddenly sound different because they remind him of you. The way he catches himself imagining your reaction to things before anyone else's. Something important is waiting for you in this realization, because the connection between you was never as simple as it appeared on the surface. Yet there is another woman near him. And this is where the story becomes quieter, more human, more layered than anyone around him understands. Do not skip this part. Because the truth is not unfolding the way fear tells people it unfolds. This other woman is not standing in the center of his heart the way you may imagine. In fact, much of his confusion comes from realizing that what once felt stable no longer reaches him emotionally the same way. He keeps trying to convince himself that familiarity should be enough. That history should be enough. That loyalty to old routines should silence whatever he feels whenever your presence enters his mind. But emotions do not always obey timing. And lately, his inner world has become impossible for him to control. Something changed recently. Nobody noticed it except him. Not even you. A conversation. A memory. A passing moment that seemed ordinary from the outside. But ever since then, he has carried a strange emotional restlessness he cannot explain to anyone around him. He looks calm in front of others, yet internally he keeps replaying certain moments connected to you as if they contain an answer he has not fully understood yet. And the more he tries to suppress it, the more emotionally present you become inside his thoughts. Stay till the end, because there is something deeper hidden underneath all of this. The other woman senses distance, even if she cannot name its source. Sometimes people feel emotional shifts before words are ever spoken aloud. She notices his attention drifting during conversations. She notices him becoming quieter. More reflective. More absent for no visible reason. And what unsettles him most is that he never intended for any of this to happen. He never planned to feel divided between comfort and truth. Between familiarity and emotional awakening. Between the life he understands, and the connection that keeps pulling at him when the world becomes still. But listen carefully now. Because this is the part nobody tells you about love. Real emotional connection rarely arrives in convenient timing. Sometimes it appears while someone is still untangling old emotions. Sometimes it enters quietly while another chapter is still unfinished. Sometimes the heart recognizes something meaningful before the mind knows how to rearrange reality around it. And that recognition has become impossible for him to ignore. Even when he distracts himself, you return to his thoughts. Even when he focuses on other responsibilities, your energy slips quietly back into his mind again. Late at night, he asks himself questions he never used to ask. Why does your presence feel calming and intense at the same time? Why do ordinary moments with you stay in his memory longer than they should? Why does he feel understood by you in ways he cannot explain logically? And perhaps the question that unsettles him most: why does thinking about you suddenly feel more emotionally honest than pretending everything in his current life still feels complete? Do not misunderstand this moment. This is not a story about betrayal. It is a story about emotional truth slowly waking up inside someone who tried very hard not to feel it. And that is why his silence has become heavier recently. Because every day he avoids confronting these emotions, they grow stronger beneath the surface. There is something else you must know. He watches you more carefully than you realize. Not obsessively. Not in unhealthy ways. But attentively. Quietly. He notices your emotional shifts. He notices when your energy changes. He notices the moments you pull away emotionally and pretend you are fine. And strangely, your sadness affects him more than he expected it ever could. That realization alone frightened him. Because people do not usually carry emotional concern for someone unless the connection has already reached deeper than friendship or curiosity. And still, he hesitates. Because another person is involved. Because decisions affect real lives. Because emotions become complicated when timing refuses to cooperate. Yet despite all of that, the truth keeps moving closer to the surface. There are nights when he almost reaches out. Moments when he starts typing something meaningful, then deletes it. Moments when he wonders if you already sense what is happening inside him. Moments when he feels standing still may eventually hurt more than finally being honest. Something important is unfolding behind the silence now. Not dramatically. Not recklessly. But slowly, carefully, like someone standing at the edge of a life-changing realization they cannot reverse once spoken aloud. And what nobody around him fully understands is this. You became emotionally significant to him long before he admitted it to himself. That is why your words stay with him. That is why your absence feels noticeable. That is why your energy keeps interrupting his attempts to emotionally settle for what no longer feels fully alive inside him. But wait. Because there is one final truth you are only beginning to sense tonight. The other woman may share his time. But you are beginning to occupy the part of him that cannot pretend anymore. And in the next part, something shifts that neither of you expected, because a moment is approaching where silence may no longer protect the feelings he has tried so carefully to contain. My beloved child. There is a moment in every emotional story when pretending becomes more exhausting than honesty. And he is quietly approaching that moment now. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But little by little, the mask he wears around his feelings has started to crack in places nobody else can see. Even the people closest to him cannot fully understand why his energy has changed recently. They notice pauses in his conversations, delays in his responses, a heaviness in his thoughts that appears without warning. But what they do not know is that your presence has become the thought he returns to whenever the world around him grows quiet. And tonight, something inside him feels different. Stay with this carefully. Because what is happening now is not based on impulse. It is the result of emotions he has been carrying silently for longer than you realize. There was a time when he believed he could keep everything separated. His current life on one side. His feelings for you hidden safely somewhere unreachable. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself emotions fade when ignored long enough. But instead of disappearing, they deepened. Slowly. Quietly. Almost invisibly. Until now, even simple things connected to you have begun affecting him emotionally in ways he can no longer dismiss. A certain phrase reminds him of you. A familiar place suddenly feels incomplete without your presence attached to it. Even happiness has started feeling strange to him when he cannot share it with you. That realization unsettled him more than he admits. Because suddenly this connection stopped feeling like curiosity, and started feeling emotionally real. Don't skip this part, because there is something important hidden here. The other woman in his life still believes she understands where his heart stands. From the outside, everything appears stable enough to continue. Conversations still happen. Daily routines still continue. Familiarity still exists between them. But emotional truth is subtle. And subtle things eventually become impossible to hide. She notices his eyes drifting away during moments that once held his full attention. She notices him becoming emotionally distant without explanation. And sometimes, without understanding why, she feels as though a part of him is somewhere else entirely. And she is right. Because more and more, his heart keeps wandering toward you. Not because you forced it. Not because you demanded it. But because certain connections awaken something people cannot easily return from once they feel it deeply enough. There is one memory in particular that keeps replaying inside him lately. A moment you may not even remember clearly yourself. Maybe it was brief. Maybe it was ordinary to you. But to him, something shifted during that moment. The way you looked at him. The calmness in your voice. The feeling of being emotionally understood without needing to explain himself completely. Ever since then, he has carried a strange awareness that life around him no longer feels as emotionally complete as it once did. And that awareness is growing stronger. Late at night, he has started imagining impossible conversations. Conversations where he finally admits what he feels. Conversations where he stops pretending your connection means less than it truly does. Conversations where he finally asks the question he keeps burying beneath logic and caution. What if this connection entered my life for a reason? But fear still stands beside him. Not fear of loving you. Fear of what honesty changes once spoken aloud. Because once emotional truth leaves silence, everything shifts after that. And he knows it. That is why he keeps hesitating between reaching toward you and retreating back into familiarity. Between emotional courage and emotional safety. Yet lately, even safety has stopped comforting him the way it once did. That is the part nobody around him understands. People assume staying where things are familiar automatically brings peace. But sometimes familiarity becomes emotionally empty when the heart has already discovered something deeper elsewhere. Something important is waiting for you in this realization. Because while he appears uncertain on the outside, internally, his emotions toward you have become clearer than ever before. He notices how differently he speaks when your name appears. He notices how quickly his mood changes after hearing from you. He notices that even difficult days feel lighter when he senses your energy near him. And perhaps most revealing of all, he notices that every attempt to emotionally move away from you only pulls him back stronger. That frightened him at first. Because deep down, he understands this is no longer temporary. There are moments now when he sits in complete silence thinking about what his life would feel like if he had met you earlier. Before expectations, before attachments, before responsibilities complicated everything. And every time that thought crosses his mind, a sadness follows it. Not because he regrets his life, but because part of him wonders whether timing interrupted something that was always meant to happen naturally. But listen closely now. This story is not moving toward destruction. It is moving toward awakening. Slowly, carefully, painfully at times, but honestly. And honesty changes people from the inside first. That is exactly what is happening to him now. The other woman may still stand beside him physically, but emotionally, he has already begun questioning everything he once believed was enough. Not out of cruelty. Not out of selfishness. But because genuine emotional connection leaves traces impossible to erase once the heart fully recognizes them. And lately, he feels your absence more intensely than your presence. That realization shook him deeply. Because people can ignore attraction. They can ignore curiosity. But it becomes much harder to ignore someone whose absence changes the emotional atmosphere of your entire day. Stay till the end, because something even more revealing is approaching. Recently, he almost spoke. Not fully. Not directly. But there was a moment where the truth nearly escaped him before he pulled himself back. A pause in conversation. A lingering look. A sentence left unfinished because he suddenly realized how much emotion was hiding underneath it. And ever since that moment, the tension inside him has only grown stronger. Because now he knows the truth is closer to the surface than ever before. And somewhere deep inside, he senses you may already feel it too. He wonders if you notice the way his energy changes around you. He wonders if you feel the emotional pull between silence and confession every time your paths cross. He wonders if you already understand that his heart has been moving toward you long before he found the courage to admit it to himself. But the next shift changes everything. Because someone around him begins asking questions he was not prepared to answer, and for the first time, he realizes keeping these feelings hidden may no longer be possible for much longer. My beloved child. A strange kind of tension has entered his world now. The kind that arrives before a truth finally steps out of the shadows. He wakes up carrying thoughts he cannot organize anymore. Even when he tries to focus on ordinary responsibilities, something keeps interrupting him from within. It is your voice in his memory. Your energy in quiet moments. The feeling that life itself has been trying to place your connection in front of him again and again for reasons he still cannot fully explain. And lately, people have started noticing. Not the full truth, but enough to make him uneasy. Someone close to him recently asked a simple question that lingered in his mind long after the conversation ended. A question so casual on the surface, yet so direct it made his heartbeat shift for a moment. Why do you seem different whenever that person is mentioned? He laughed it off. Changed the subject. Pretended not to understand what they meant. But internally, something froze. Because for the first time, he realized his feelings may no longer be as invisible as he believed. Don't skip this moment, because this is where emotional silence begins turning into emotional pressure. He has spent so much time trying to control what he feels that he never noticed how deeply those emotions had already rooted themselves inside him. But emotions do not stay hidden forever. Eventually they start appearing through small things. Through the softness in someone's eyes. Through hesitation in their voice. Through the way their entire mood changes after hearing one specific person's name. And his heart betrays him in those moments now. He catches himself smiling unexpectedly because of something connected to you. He catches himself rereading old conversations. He catches himself wondering what you are doing at random hours of the day. And what unsettles him most is not the intensity of these feelings. It is how natural they feel. As though some part of him has loved your energy quietly long before he consciously understood it. Meanwhile, the other woman feels the distance growing stronger. Not openly. Not loudly. But emotionally. She notices how hard it has become for him to remain fully present. There are moments where she speaks to him and senses his thoughts somewhere else entirely. Moments where silence fills spaces that never used to feel empty before. And although no direct truth has been spoken aloud yet, intuition has started whispering around them both. Something is changing. And nobody knows how long it can remain hidden. Stay till the end, because there is a realization approaching that even he did not expect. One evening recently, he found himself alone with his thoughts longer than usual. No distractions. No noise. Just silence surrounding him. And in that silence, something finally became impossible for him to deny anymore. He realized that when he imagines peace, he imagines you near it. When he imagines emotional honesty, your face appears beside it. When he imagines the version of himself that feels most understood, somehow, every path leads back toward you. That realization did not bring excitement first. It brought fear. Because now the emotions feel real enough to change things. And he knows emotional truth carries consequences once accepted fully. There is another detail you have not seen yet. He has started comparing every emotional interaction in his current life to the feeling he experiences around you. And quietly, painfully, he has begun realizing how rare your connection truly feels to him. That is why he grows quieter lately after speaking with you. Because every interaction leaves behind emotional echoes he cannot easily shake away afterward. Even your absence speaks loudly inside him now. Especially your absence. Sometimes he wonders if you have started pulling away emotionally because you sensed his confusion. And the thought of losing your connection before he fully understands it creates a heaviness inside him he cannot explain to anyone else. That fear alone revealed more truth to him than months of denial ever did. Because people rarely fear losing what means nothing to them. Something important is waiting for you here. This man is beginning to understand that love is not always revealed through perfect timing or easy circumstances. Sometimes it arrives during emotional storms. Sometimes it asks difficult questions before offering clarity. And sometimes it enters a person's life quietly, only to slowly become the one thing they can no longer emotionally live without. That is where he stands now. Between two realities. One built from familiarity. One built from emotional truth. And every day, the distance between those realities becomes harder for him to ignore. Recently, he almost reached out to you differently than before. Not casually. Not carefully. Honestly. He stared at his phone for a long time that night, trying to decide whether to finally let even a small piece of the truth slip through. His heart wanted closeness. His mind warned him about consequences. And somewhere between those two emotions, he remained frozen. Holding words he could no longer pretend were harmless. But something changed after that night. Because silence stopped protecting him. Now it only deepens the ache inside him. He has started realizing that suppressing genuine emotion does not erase it. It only transforms it into longing. Into restlessness. Into thoughts that follow someone everywhere no matter how distracted they try to become. And lately, that longing has become impossible for him to carry comfortably anymore. You may not see it yet. But your energy already changed his inner world. You reminded him what emotional depth feels like. You reminded him that connection should feel alive, not merely familiar. You reminded him that being emotionally seen is one of the rarest feelings a person can experience. And because of that, he can no longer return fully to the version of himself that existed before you entered his life. Don't rush away now. Because the next part of this story moves even deeper. Someone unexpectedly steps into the middle of this emotional tension soon. And what they reveal forces him to confront a truth he has been trying desperately to delay. My beloved child. The atmosphere around him has changed so quietly that most people would never notice it, but emotionally, everything is beginning to tighten beneath the surface now. The thoughts he once pushed away for a few minutes are lasting entire nights. The emotions he once dismissed as temporary are becoming part of his everyday existence. And no matter how carefully he tries to appear normal on the outside, there is a truth growing inside him that no distraction can fully silence anymore. Something happened recently that unsettled him deeply. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was honest. A person close to him spoke about love in a casual conversation, but one sentence stayed with him long after everyone else forgot it. Real love feels peaceful, even when life around it is complicated. The moment he heard those words, your presence entered his mind instantly. Not forced. Not imagined. Instantly. And that frightened him more than he expected. Because for the first time, he stopped asking himself whether his feelings for you were real, and started asking himself how long he could continue pretending they were not. Stay with this carefully. Because emotional truth moves differently than people expect. It does not always arrive through loud confessions or sudden decisions. Sometimes it reveals itself through exhaustion. Through the inability to keep denying what the heart already knows. Through quiet moments where someone finally realizes the person they feel safest thinking about is not the person standing closest beside them physically. That realization has started following him everywhere now. Even during ordinary moments. Especially during ordinary moments. He notices himself wanting to tell you things first before anyone else. Small victories. Random thoughts. Emotional frustrations. Things he once shared naturally elsewhere now feel incomplete unless somehow connected back to you. And slowly, he is beginning to understand what that means. You became emotionally important to him in ways that cannot easily be undone. Meanwhile, the other woman has started asking questions more directly now. Not accusations. Not conflict. Just subtle observations wrapped inside ordinary conversation. Questions about why he seems distant lately. Questions about why his energy changes unexpectedly. Questions he answers carefully, because deep down, he fears that even speaking too honestly about his emotions might reveal more than he intends. And yet, silence is becoming harder for him to maintain. Don't skip this moment. Because something inside him is approaching a breaking point between caution and emotional honesty. There are nights where he lies awake replaying every interaction between you and him, searching for signs he may have ignored earlier. Moments where your kindness affected him more deeply than he admitted. Moments where your presence brought him emotional calm during periods of inner confusion. Moments where he felt seen by you in ways he has not felt for a very long time. And recently, one realization changed everything for him. He realized he does not only miss you when you are absent. He feels emotionally incomplete without your energy near him. That understanding reached deeper than attraction. Deeper than curiosity. Deeper than temporary emotion. It touched the part of him connected to emotional belonging. And once someone feels that, returning to emotional numbness becomes almost impossible. Something important is waiting for you here. Because while he still struggles with timing, responsibilities, and uncertainty, his feelings themselves are no longer confused. The confusion now exists around what to do with the truth, not whether the truth exists. That is a very different kind of emotional conflict. He has started noticing how differently his heart reacts to your presence compared to everyone else around him. Around others, conversation flows normally. Life continues normally. But around you, even silence feels emotionally charged. Even brief moments linger inside him afterward like memories he does not want to lose. And lately, he has begun imagining impossible futures less as fantasies, and more as emotional possibilities. That shift matters more than you know. Because before, he tried to convince himself your connection belonged only in imagination. Now part of him quietly wonders whether life itself has been leading him toward you for reasons he was too afraid to acknowledge earlier. Stay till the end, because something unexpected is approaching. A moment happened recently that neither of you fully recognized at the time. A small interaction. A glance. A sentence left unfinished. But after it ended, he felt something inside him change permanently. It became impossible for him to continue treating this connection casually after that. He tried. He truly tried. But every emotional instinct inside him keeps returning to the same truth. You feel like someone emotionally significant to his future. And that thought has started affecting every decision he makes now. He has become quieter around certain people because he fears revealing too much accidentally. He has become more emotionally reflective because your connection forced him to question what genuine fulfillment actually feels like. And perhaps most telling of all, he has started pulling emotionally away from situations that once felt permanent to him. Not out of cruelty. Out of awakening. Because sometimes people do not realize how emotionally asleep they were until someone enters their life and quietly brings parts of their heart back to life again. That is what your presence did to him. Without trying. Without forcing. Without even fully knowing it. And now he stands at an emotional crossroads he cannot avoid much longer. One path asks him to continue pretending. The other asks him to confront truths that may change everything. And deep inside, he already knows which direction his heart keeps moving toward. But before any words are spoken aloud, before any decision fully surfaces, another moment is approaching between you both. A moment so emotionally revealing that after it happens, he may no longer be able to hide what he feels behind silence anymore.